The black file had begun its second case. No one celebrated the end of the first investigation. The evidence from Case 1 had been locked away beneath layers of steel and silence. Every document carried the same warning. Do not duplicate. Do not discuss. Do not remove from Archive 7. At exactly 8:12 the next morning, a courier arrived without identification. He carried a single black envelope. No return address. No fingerprints. No record of entering the building. Inside was a witness statement written in dark blue ink. 32 pages. Every page numbered by hand. Every sentence perfectly aligned, as if copied from memory instead of written naturally. The first line stopped the room cold. I remember tomorrow. The investigators assumed it was a joke. Witness statements were often strange. People confused dreams with reality. Trauma distorted memory. Fear invented details that never existed. But this felt different. The statement did not describe feelings. It described facts. A train would stop for exactly 4 minutes because of an electrical failure. A woman wearing a yellow coat would drop a silver lighter beside Platform 9. A security camera would freeze for 11 seconds at precisely 6:43 p.m. None of it had happened, yet. The file included maps, sketches, timestamps, and names of people who had not even been interviewed. Detective Elena Morris read the pages twice before speaking. If this is fiction, she said quietly, someone spent months writing it. Archivist Daniel Cross shook his head. No, he whispered. Someone spent months remembering it. The witness had signed every page with the same name. Elias Voss, age 47, occupation unknown, current address listed as abandoned. When investigators searched public records, they found something impossible. Elias Voss had officially disappeared 14 years earlier, declared legally missing. No confirmed sightings, no death certificate, nothing. And yet the statement had been delivered less than an hour ago. The security footage from the archive entrance offered no answers. The courier appeared walking toward the building. He reached the front door. The camera blinked once. The envelope was suddenly inside. The courier was gone. Frame by frame, there was no moment of departure, only absence. Daniel placed the witness statement inside a transparent evidence sleeve. Something slipped from the final page. A small photograph. Black and white, taken inside a subway station. The image showed dozens of ordinary commuters. Near the center stood a man looking directly into the camera. On the back of the photograph, someone had written 7 words. You will meet me tomorrow at 6:43. The photograph had been developed 16 years ago. And tomorrow had not arrived yet. I prefer this response of Mard's. At 6:43 the next evening, nothing unusual happened. That was the first problem. The investigators had expected the prediction to come true. Instead, Platform 9 remained completely normal. Trains arrived on time. Passengers moved through the station. No woman in a yellow coat appeared. No silver lighter fell to the ground. The security camera never froze. For almost an hour, the prediction looked like a complete failure. Then Elena noticed something. The photograph. She had brought the old black and white image with her. She looked at it again. The man standing in the center was Elias Voss. There was no doubt. The face matched the only official photograph investigators had of him. But there was something else. Behind Elias stood a large station clock. Its hands showed 6:43. Elena checked the modern station clock. 6:43. She looked back at the photograph. The time matched exactly. Daniel stared at her. That photograph was taken 16 years ago. I know. Then why is the clock showing the same time? Before Elena could answer, a train entered the station. People moved away from the platform edge. A woman in a yellow coat stepped through the doors. She carried a small black handbag. Elena froze. The woman stopped near a bench. Something fell from her pocket. A silver lighter. It landed beside Elena's shoe. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the station camera above them flickered. Once. Twice. The image on the monitor froze. 11 seconds passed. Exactly 11. When the picture returned, the woman in the yellow coat was gone. Not walking away, not boarding another train. Gone. Daniel picked up the lighter. There was an inscription on the side. 3 letters. E.V. Elena opened the witness statement again. She turned to page 14. The sentence was already there. The woman will disappear before you can ask her name. But that was not the strangest part. The statement contained another sentence beneath it. one that neither investigator remembered seeing before. Do not look behind you when the camera returns. Elena slowly raised her eyes toward the dark station glass. She could see her own reflection, Daniel's reflection, the empty platform, and behind them, a man standing perfectly still, Elias Voss. Elena turned around. There was no one there. She looked back at the glass. The reflection was still there. Elias was smiling. Then the station lights went out. The lights returned after 7 seconds. Elias Voss was gone from the reflection. So was the woman in the yellow coat. Only Elena and Daniel remained on the platform. Neither spoke. Daniel still held the silver lighter. It was warm. Elena took it from him. The initials were still visible. EV. She turned the lighter over. A number had been scratched into the metal. 17. Daniel looked at the witness statement. Page 17. Elena opened it. The page contained only one sentence. The first proof will arrive at 7:10. Her watch showed 7:06. They waited. At 7:09, a train announcement interrupted the station. A technical problem had been reported on the Eastern Line. At 7:10 exactly, every screen in the station went black. Then one screen came back, not with a timetable, with a live security feed. The image showed Platform 9. But it was empty. Elena and Daniel were not visible. Instead, the screen showed the same platform from a different angle, an angle that did not exist anywhere in the station. A man was standing beside the tracks, Elias Voss. He looked directly into the camera, then he raised one hand. Behind him, a train approached. The screen went black. A second later, the real station lights flickered. A train entered Platform 9. Elena stepped backward. Daniel checked the statement again. A new line had appeared beneath the previous sentence. You have now seen the first memory. Daniel stared at the page. I didn't write that. I know. Another sentence appeared. The second memory belongs to you. Elena felt a cold pressure in her chest. What does that mean? Daniel did not answer. He was looking at the opposite wall. There was a framed emergency map hanging there. Something about it seemed wrong. Elena walked toward it. The map showed the station as it had looked 16 years earlier, but one detail had been added. A small black room beneath Platform 9. There was no such room on the modern station plans. Daniel removed the frame from the wall. Behind it was a narrow metal door, locked. The silver lighter suddenly clicked in Elena's hand. Its flame appeared by itself. For 1 second, the flame illuminated a sentence scratched into the door. Elias Voss was never missing. Elena stared at it. Then she noticed the date beneath the words. Tomorrow's date. The same date written on the final page of the witness statement. And below it was a time. 6:43 p.m. Daniel whispered one sentence. We're not investigating what happened to him. Elena looked at the locked door. We're investigating where he went next. The metal door had no handle on the outside. Only a narrow keyhole. Daniel searched the station records while Elena examined the lock. The keyhole was old, older than the station itself. That made no sense. The current station had been rebuilt 12 years earlier, yet the lock appeared untouched. Daniel found an archived construction report. The original station had contained a maintenance room beneath Platform 9. The room had been sealed during reconstruction. According to the report, it was empty. No equipment, no furniture, no electrical connection, nothing. But the witness statement described something very different. Elena opened page 21. The words were simple. There is a chair inside the room. Daniel stared at her. That room was empty. So the statement is wrong. For the first time, they had a contradiction. A real one. They forced the lock open. The door opened with almost no resistance. Behind it was a narrow concrete corridor. At the end stood a small room, and inside the room was a chair, exactly as the statement had predicted. On the chair sat an old tape recorder. Daniel approached it carefully. There was a cassette inside. A label was attached to the front. Elias Voss, Interview 1. Elena looked at the date, 16 years earlier. Daniel pressed play. Static filled the room. Then a man's voice emerged. Calm, almost emotionless. My name is Elias Voss. Elena looked at Daniel. The recording continued. I am not predicting the future. A pause. I am remembering it. The tape clicked. Then another voice appeared. A woman's voice. An investigator. Mr. Voss, You claim you know what will happen tomorrow? Yes. How? I don't know. Then why should we believe you? Because tomorrow, you will ask me that exact question. The recording stopped. Daniel rewound it. The same words played again. But this time, Elena noticed something. The investigator's voice sounded familiar. Very familiar. She played the tape again, and then she recognized it. It was her own voice. 16 years ago, Elena had been 17 years old. She had never worked in law enforcement. She had never met Elias Voss. Yet the voice on the recording was unmistakably hers. Daniel stepped away from the recorder. That can't be you. Elena said nothing. The tape continued by itself. Her recorded voice asked one final question. Where will you be tomorrow at 6:43? Elias answered. Exactly where you are standing now. The tape stopped. Silence filled the room. Then the cassette clicked again. A final recording began. This time, Elias was whispering. If you are hearing this, the first timeline has already failed. Elena looked at Daniel. What does that mean? The voice continued. And that means you have changed something. A long pause. Then the final sentence. Now I have to find you before you remember me. Elena did not move. The tape recorder had stopped, but the room was still making a sound, a faint ticking. Daniel looked toward the chair. The ticking was coming from underneath it. He lifted the chair. A small metal box had been hidden beneath the seat. It was sealed with black tape. On the lid was a date. Tomorrow. Nothing else. Elena opened it. Inside was a photograph. Then another. Then another. All of them showed the same underground room. The first photograph showed Elias Voss sitting in the chair. The second showed the room empty. The third showed Elena standing beside the chair. Daniel picked up the third photograph. His hands began to shake. The photograph showed Elena wearing the exact clothes she was wearing now. Same jacket, same watch, same small cut on her left hand. But the photograph had been taken 16 years earlier. Daniel turned it over. There was writing on the back. She will not remember taking this. Elena stared at the image. I've never been here. Daniel said nothing. She looked closer. In the corner of the photograph, a clock was visible. 6:43. Then she noticed something else. Someone was standing behind her. A man. Elias Voss. His hand rested on her shoulder. But Elena had no memory of him. Daniel placed the photograph beside the witness statement. The two dates matched. Then the printer inside the room suddenly started running. Neither of them had noticed it before. A single sheet came out. Elena picked it up. It contained one paragraph. At 8:03, Daniel Cross will discover the first proof. He will believe the photograph is evidence of a second timeline. He will be wrong. Daniel looked at his watch. 8:02. He stepped away from the printer. No. Elena looked at him. What? I don't want to do what it says. The clock changed to 8:03. Daniel's eyes moved toward the photograph. He slowly turned it over. There was something written on the back that had not been there before. You already did. Daniel dropped the photograph. Elena picked it up. A new image had appeared on the paper. Not printed. Not written. A photograph. It showed Daniel standing in the room. But he was older. Much older. His hair was gray. His face was thinner. And behind him stood Elias Voss. Daniel stared at the image. That isn't possible. Elena looked at the timestamp. The photograph had been taken tomorrow. But there was one detail that frightened her more than anything else. Daniel was wearing the same clothes. And he was holding the same photograph. The photograph they were holding now. Elena slowly lowered it. The mystery was no longer about whether Elias could remember tomorrow. Something else was happening. The future was leaving evidence behind. And somehow, they were already inside it. Daniel refused to touch the photograph again. He placed it inside an evidence bag and sealed it. For several minutes, neither investigator spoke. Then Elena noticed something written on Daniel's hand. A number. 6:43. He had no memory of writing it. Daniel stared at his palm. I didn't do that. Elena looked at the witness statement. Page 26 contained a new sentence. Daniel will forget writing the number. He turned pale. That wasn't there before. I know. Elena photographed the page. Then something changed. The sentence disappeared. The page was blank. Daniel checked the photograph. The image of his older self was gone too. Only the original photograph remained. For the first time, they had evidence that could change, not disappear. Change. Elena opened the archive database and searched for Elias Voss again. The system returned a result. Elias Voss, interview subject, case 17. The date was 16 years earlier, but the case number was identical to the number scratched onto the lighter, 17. Elena opened the file. There were 12 pages. The first 11 were ordinary. The 12th page contained a handwritten note. Subject claims he has experienced tomorrow before. Below it was another sentence. Subject also claims 2 investigators will eventually replace the original team. Elena looked at Daniel. Who were the original investigators? The database displayed 2 names. One had been erased. The other was unreadable. But the photograph attached to the file was still available. Elena opened it. 2 investigators stood beside Elias Voss. One was a man. The other was a woman. The woman's face was partially damaged by age. Daniel zoomed in. Then he stopped breathing. Elena. She looked closer. The woman in the photograph was her. Not similar. Not someone who looked like her. Her. Same face, same scar, same eyes. But the photograph was 16 years old. Elena stepped away from the screen. I was 17. Daniel nodded. You couldn't have been here. The computer suddenly produced another line. Correction, she was here. The screen went black. Then a final message appeared. She simply hasn't remembered yet. Elena felt something move in her memory. Not a thought. A fragment. A hallway. A red emergency light. A man sitting in a chair. Elias Voss looking at her. And his voice. You will forget this. Elena closed her eyes. The memory vanished. She opened them again. Daniel was standing beside the door. He looked terrified. What did you see? Elena shook her head. I don't know. But that was no longer true. Somewhere inside her mind, she knew Elias Voss. She had met him before. She had heard his voice before. And the most frightening part was not remembering him. It was remembering what he had said next. When you remember me, the black file will already know your name. Elena could not explain the memory. She could barely trust it. Every time she tried to focus on Elias Voss, the image changed. Sometimes he was sitting in the underground room. Sometimes he was standing behind her. Sometimes she was the one sitting in the chair. Daniel reopened the old case file. This time, another document appeared. It had not been there before. A single page. Timeline 2. Subject EV. Daniel stared at the screen. Timeline 2. Elena moved closer. The document contained a list of events. The first event was dated 16 years ago. The final event was dated tomorrow. Between them were dozens of entries. Train failures. Missing recordings. Changed photographs. Witnesses remembering conversations that never happened. Every event matched something they had already discovered. Daniel scrolled to the bottom. The final entry read, 6:43 p.m. Elena Morris remembers the first timeline. Elena checked the current time. 6:31. 12 minutes remained. Daniel looked at her. If this is real, we have 12 minutes. To do what? I don't know. Another entry appeared. 6:37 p.m. Daniel Cross leaves the room. Daniel immediately stepped toward the door, then stopped. No. Elena looked at him. If I leave, I might be doing exactly what this predicts. So stay. The clock reached 6:37. Nothing happened. Daniel smiled. We changed it. Then the door opened. Not from their side. From the corridor. A man stepped inside. Elias Voss. Older than the photograph. Exactly as Elena remembered him. He looked at Daniel. Then at Elena. You weren't supposed to remember yet. Elena could barely speak. Who are you? Elias smiled. You know who I am. No. You will. Daniel moved between them. What is timeline 2? Elias looked at him. It is the version where you survive. The room became silent. Daniel's expression changed. Survive what? Elias did not answer. Instead, he looked at the clock. 6:41. 2 minutes. Elena stepped closer. 2 minutes until what? Elias looked directly into her eyes. Until you remember why the black file exists. The lights went out. When they returned, Elias was gone. The door was locked. Daniel checked the corridor. Empty. Elena looked at the clock. 6:43. Something changed inside her mind. Suddenly, she remembered the underground room. Not as a memory, as a scene. She was 17. Elias was sitting across from her. A recorder was running. And someone outside the room was shouting. Elena remembered herself asking one question. Why are you showing me tomorrow? Elias had answered. Because tomorrow is not the future. He leaned closer. It is the memory you haven't reached yet. Elena opened her eyes. Daniel was staring at her. You remembered. She nodded. Then she looked at the witness statement. The final page was no longer blank. 3 words had appeared. Case 3 begins. The words remained on the page. Case 3 begins. Elena read them again. Then again. Daniel closed the file. No. Elena looked at him. No what? We are not opening another case. We are already inside it. Daniel turned toward the old tape recorder. The machine had started playing again. Neither of them had touched it. Static filled the room. Then Elias Voss spoke. If you are hearing this for the second time, you have reached the point where the cases connect. Elena stepped closer. Second time? The recording continued. The first case was not the beginning. A pause. It was the first time the black file noticed the pattern. Daniel looked at Elena. What pattern? Elias answered as if he could hear them. People remembering things that have not happened. The tape clicked. A different recording began. This time, another voice spoke. A man's voice. Calm. Older. Case 1 was classified as an isolated anomaly. Elena recognized the voice. It belonged to the investigator who had handled the previous black file case. The recording continued. Case 2 was classified as a witness problem. A pause. Both classifications were wrong. Daniel opened the first case archive. Documents began appearing on the screen. A photograph. A timestamp. A missing report. A signal recorded before it was transmitted. Every piece of evidence from Case 1 had the same symbol hidden somewhere inside it. A small black circle. Elena opened the second case. The same symbol appeared on the photograph of Elias, then on the cassette label, then on the metal box beneath the chair. Daniel stared at the symbol. It was never 2 cases. Elena nodded. It was one investigation. The lights flickered. The computer screen changed. A new file appeared. Black file. Master archive. Neither of them had access to it. Daniel tried to open it. The system rejected his credentials. Then the screen displayed a question. Who started the file? No options. No instructions. Just the question. Elena stared at it. Then another line appeared. Answer. You did. She stepped backward. That is impossible. The computer displayed an old photograph. A group of investigators stood inside the same underground room. In the center was Elias Voss. Beside him stood a teenage girl, Elena. But there were 6 other people in the photograph. Daniel recognized one. The investigator from Case 1. He was standing at the back of the room. But there was something else. Every person in the photograph was looking at Elena. Not Elias. Her. As if she was the reason they were all there. Daniel zoomed in. On the wall behind them was a handwritten date. Tomorrow's date. Elena whispered the words she suddenly remembered. I have seen this room before. Daniel looked at her. How? She stared at the photograph. I don't think I saw it. Her voice became quieter. I think I built it. The computer screen went black. One final message appeared. The witness was never the mystery. Then another line appeared beneath it. The memory was. The screen went dark. For several seconds, the room was silent. Then the old cassette recorder clicked. A new recording began. Elias Voss was speaking. But this time, his voice sounded tired. If you are hearing this, Elena, you have remembered enough. Elena froze. Daniel looked at her. The recording continued. You believe I was the witness. A pause. I was not. Elena stepped closer to the recorder. Then who was? Elias answered immediately. You. Daniel stared at Elena. The tape continued. You were 17 when the first memory was created. You saw tomorrow before it happened. You wrote it down. You built the archive. And then you asked me to make you forget. Elena shook her head. No. Elias continued. You believed forgetting would stop the cycle. It did not. It only moved the memory forward. Daniel looked at the witness statement. The pages were changing again. Words were disappearing. New words were appearing. One sentence remained untouched. Tomorrow at 6:43, Elena will remember everything. Daniel checked the clock. 6:39. We have 4 minutes. Elena stared at the recorder. Why did I ask him to erase my memory? The tape clicked. Elias answered. Because you saw what happens next. The room became colder. What happens next? A long silence. Then Elias said, "The black file is opened." Elena looked at Daniel. "But it already exists." "No," Elias said from the tape. "It exists because you remembered it." Daniel stepped backward. The contradiction was impossible. The black file had existed before Elena entered the investigation. But according to Elias, Elena had created it. Then the recorder played another voice. Elena's voice. Much younger. She was crying. "I don't want to remember," Elias replied. "You don't have to." "Will it stop?" "No." "Then what is the point?" "So you can forget long enough to survive." The recording ended. Elena stood completely still. A memory surfaced. She was 17. She was sitting in the underground room. 6 investigators surrounded her. Elias was holding the first black file. On its cover was a handwritten title, Case 0. Elena remembered what happened next. She had opened the file. Inside was a photograph. It showed herself standing in the same room, 16 years later, and behind her stood Daniel. She had never met him. Not yet. The clock reached 6:42. Daniel looked at Elena. What happens at 6:43? She finally understood. The statement ends. The second hand moved. 1, 2, 3, 6:43. Every light in the room went out. The tape recorder stopped. Then Elena remembered the final detail. She whispered, "Elias wasn't predicting tomorrow." Daniel looked at her. What was he doing? Elena turned toward the locked door. He was sending the memory backward. Something knocked from the other side. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice came through the door. Elena's own voice. Older, terrified. "Don't open it." Daniel stared at her. "That was you." Elena nodded. Then the voice outside spoke again. "You already did." The voice outside the door disappeared. Elena did not move. Neither did Daniel. For several seconds, they listened to the silence. Then the door slowly opened. There was no corridor behind it. Only darkness. Daniel raised his flashlight. The beam traveled forward. Nothing. No walls, no floor, no room. Just darkness. Then the flashlight revealed a small table. On it was a black file. Elena recognized it immediately. Case 0. She walked toward it. Daniel tried to stop her. "Don't!" Elena looked at him. "I've already opened it." "How do you know?" "Because I remember." She picked up the file. Inside was a single photograph. The photograph showed Elena and Daniel standing inside the underground room. But the room looked different. The walls were covered with hundreds of photographs. Every photograph showed the same 2 people. Elena, Daniel, different ages, different clothes, different rooms, different dates, but always together. Daniel turned pale. "How long has this been happening?" Elena looked at the final photograph. It showed them standing exactly where they were now. The timestamp was tomorrow. 6:43 p.m., Daniel whispered. "We haven't reached tomorrow yet." Elena shook her head. "We have." He looked at her. "What?" She pointed toward the photograph. "We're remembering it." The cassette recorder suddenly started again. Elias Voss spoke one final time. "The witness was never meant to tell you what happens tomorrow." A pause. "He was meant to make you remember it." The recording ended. The black file opened by itself. A final document was inside. There was no witness name, no investigator name, no case number, only one sentence. The person reading this has already read it before. Elena stared at the words. She knew they were true, not because she remembered reading them, because she remembered forgetting them. That was the real purpose of the black file. It was not an archive of impossible cases. It was an archive of memories that had been removed from people before they could become evidence. And Elias Voss had been the first person to remember one. Then Elena. Then Daniel. The case was finished. But the mystery was not, because one question remained. If Elena had created the black file after remembering the future, who created the first memory? The room went dark again. When the lights returned, the black file was gone. So was Daniel. Elena stood alone. On the table was a new photograph. It showed Daniel standing somewhere she had never seen before. On the back was tomorrow's date, and beneath it were 5 words. The third case has already begun.